Hi everyone, my name is Blain Henshaw. This is a book that I wrote a couple of years ago. It's called The Peddlers, and one of the many stories in this book is about a murder case that happened here on the Knowles Shore. That chapter is called The Little Peddler, Murder in Tennecape, and it's the true story of what happened more than 100 years ago, back in 1901, when two young peddlers were working together in this area, and one of them was murdered, and it was at the hand of his companion. I hope you enjoy the presentation and the book. This chapter is called The Little Peddler, Murder in Tennecape. On October the 22nd, 1902, 16-year-old Lion Lundore was murdered. His throat was slashed and he was bludgeoned to death by his peddling partner, Cyan Azaboli. The motive was never quite clear. There was some suggestion that it may have had political and religious overtones, rooted in the Turkish-Armenian conflict at that time in their homelands, Azaboli being a Turk and Lundore an Armenian. But that was only speculation. Some said it was competitive jealousy, friction, because one was a better salesman than the other. It was also suggested that it may have been merely a simple robbery, the older man stealing $10 or $11 from his colleague. Others said it was an argument over a watch, but the watch dispute was actually with one of the young villagers, Edward Church. In a recorded interview in 1980, Everett Huntley, then 88 years of age, stated, quote, "The murder was witnessed by a 15-year-old boy. That boy was Edward Church, who earlier in the day had traded a good revolver for a cheap watch. After having second thoughts about the deal, Church went looking for the peddlers in hopes of getting his revolver back. As he got closer to where Azaboli and Lundore had stopped near an abandoned mine shaft, he heard the screams of the dying youth. When he approached the crime scene and saw what was happening, he panicked, turned, and fled. Azaboli gave chase, but Church managed to escape. Rupert Bryson and a friend were returning home from bird hunting that day when they met Azaboli along the roadway. They noticed some trinkets scattered on the ground and saw that he was carrying 2 packs. That aroused their suspicions and led to their discovery of Lundore's body near the mine shaft. Several men from the village, including the 2 hunters, went in search of Azaboli. They found him having supper at the home of the Huntley family. Everett said the peddler was to stay all night, a common practice in those days. He recalled that his family, although unaware of the crime, did notice something suspicious about the young peddler. Quote again, "He had his coat on wrong side out because there was blood on his coat sleeves. After supper was cleared away, he got his pack opened. First thing we knew, the kitchen door opened and 5 men rushed right in. One had a revolver. 5 men came to get him, and there was 1 man down by the road as a standby in case he tried to get away." 10-year-old Everett witnessed the entire episode. His father, Henry B. Huntley, resisted briefly. Again a quote, "My father reached for a stick of wood and asked the men, 'Where is your authority?' They said, 'This man murdered a man.' At that, they made a citizen's arrest and took Azaboli into custody. They tied him up and took him to the old blacksmith shop. Next day, they took him from the blacksmith shop up to the old store and kept him there until Magistrate George Smith came along. After his arrest, Azaboli claimed Edward Church had shot Lundore. However, a coroner's jury concluded that Lundore, quote, came to his death at the hands of his comrade, unquote. Following an inquest at the local school, Magistrate Smith remanded Azaboli to the county jail in Windsor to await a Supreme Court trial. At a 2-day trial in early January 1903, he was convicted and sentenced to death. And that's it. Thank you. Any more questions? Just want to say I've enjoyed this. I hope you have. Our history is important. It's organizations like this and people like you who maintain it and preserve it. So don't stop what you're doing.